And so it begins again. Another championship season awaits us. Norwich City desperately hoping to be improved on last season. We are here to bring you our predictions, to preview, of course, what is going to be a 46-game marathon for Liam Manning's men. There's been plenty of change. Let's hope that means some progress for Norwich City. This is the PinkUn.com Norwich City podcast. I'm Connor Southwell, joined by Samuel Seaman, Adam Harvey, and with Paddy Davitt on holiday, we've dipped into the substitutes bench. And I'll tell you what, not a bad sub to make. City legend Iwan Roberts joins us. Iwan, how are you, my friend?
Well, if I knew I was a substitute for Paddy, I wouldn't have accepted the offer to come on. No, I'm good. I just hope I can do Paddy proud.
I'm sure you will. Absolutely. I mean, how's your summer been, first and foremost?
Good.
That's like a nice place to start.
I had a couple of World Cup qualifying games in June. Went away to Portugal for 11 days, sort of end of June, beginning of July. I was asked to do the women's Euros, the three Welsh games. Couldn't only do the second and the third against France and against England, but I was chuffed to bits that I was asked. I've done a couple of Leicester's friendlies over the last couple of weeks. And now I'm very much looking forward to going to Middlesbrough on Saturday for my first game, same as it was this time last season. Middlesbrough v Swansea. What do I get this Saturday? Middlesbrough v Swansea again.
And that is the glamour that the Championship throws up, isn't it? You get to see some brilliant locations. So Ewan's with us, obviously Sam and Adam with us as well. Over the next 50 minutes or so, we are going to be looking ahead to Norwich City's Championship season. We'll be talking about the league generally, because I think there's a feeling that maybe it's looking quite a strong Championship. Whether it will end up being that or not, we will discuss. We'll, of course, get our predictions as well. And I think it's fair to say we had mixed success last year. I'm not going to blow my own trumpet, but I did go for 13th for Norwich City. But it doesn't trump Sam's prediction, which balances it out. Sam, who did you have in your bottom three? Just to double check.
I'm trying to think of the other two that I went for, so I can pad it out a bit and delay revealing that I said Sunderland would get relegated. So that's probably, if anyone wants any sign to turn off the podcast now and go and watch something else, that's probably a good one. But I'm sure you three will come up with much better predictions than me. So probably based on that one. Don't worry at all about what I say.
Well, that balances it out quite nicely, doesn't it? Because if I got Norwich foot on, you said Sunderland would go down. The reality is, Adam, we're probably somewhere in the middle, which isn't a bad place to be in terms of predictions. And actually, the nature of it is you either look bang on or you either look a little bit silly come May. And that's the beauty of these predictions.
Yeah, that's why people tune into this podcast for our views and all our insight. We know exactly what we're talking about. I jest. But yeah, I think hopefully we can do the Norwich fans proud and at least try and put in the best predictions possible over the course of the next hour or so of the show.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued to see where you guys are at in terms of the optimism levels, because it feels like there is plenty at the moment. I mean, Sam, let's start with Saturday. Obviously, as Ewan said, he's going to be in Middlesbrough. We get I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone in the northeast, but more beautiful surroundings of Carrow Road, hopefully draped in sunshine as well. It's come around really quickly, hasn't it? And I think it's been a really interesting pre-season campaign as far as Norwich are concerned.
Yeah, I think probably the thing that stands out most as you reflect on pre-season overall is just the amount of change. I think it's quite obvious when you look at the numbers in terms of 11 new first-team signings, obviously some major players leaving towards the start of the summer as well, but also we've seen on the pitch how different the team looks. I think at times maybe that's been slightly to their detriment, particularly for those of us who are trying to stay awake during the Den Haag game out in the Netherlands, and when maybe the balance hasn't been completely perfect. But I think as we were discussing sort of before we started recording, they finished things with their best friendly, probably their best performance over the course of pre-season with that 2-0 win over Breda. And I think the levels of optimism are quite high because of that, and also probably mainly because of the recruitment they've done. So I think Millwall is an interesting test. I think it's not one that's probably going to decide promotion places or anything like that. But I think Millwall will be probably in and around the top half at least. So it's not an easy one at all, and it's probably a really good test of where Norwich are at this moment in time, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they get on.
Yeah, and Adam, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's difficult at the start of the season. You never know where teams are at. So you could be playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league or a bang average team in the league, and you never quite have anything to assess it by. But you go by how Millwall have gone, and obviously we'll talk about the game in perhaps a little bit more depth later on. But the fact that it's a team who, like Norwich, will have, we know what Alex Neil is like. He's a very good coach. Very, his teams are very well structured, very high energy out of possession. Feels like it's going to be a really good test for Liam Manning's Norwich to see where they are, and equally a team who probably are going to be trying to get in the same area of the table that Norwich City are trying to get into this season.
Yeah, I think much like maybe Norwich, they've managed to retain a couple of their key players. Norwich, of course, losing Boaz Signs, but still have Josh Sargent as we go into this weekend's round of fixtures. They've managed to keep hold of Tanganga, who I think is one of the best central defenders in this league. Ivanovic, of course, the forward up front, who is starting to sort of find some form at the back end of last season, playing his best football under Alex Neil. And I think the fact we're all Norwich fans and we understand maybe what Alex Neil will bring, is going to be a team that's going to be bang up for it. And I think there's going to be no fear, certainly away from home. I think they're always a difficult team to face, whether that's at the Den or even when they're on the road. So it's not going to be an easy one. Of course, there's that record and that maybe hangs over it a little bit from a Millwall perspective, coming to Carrow Road, not won there since 1968, which is always there to be broken, and a little bit along come Norwich. But the fact they managed to keep that record going for as long as they have would sort of always bode positive, I think, in Norwich's tick list. So on the whole, I think it's a good fixture to start the season with. The fact that Millwall don't have that momentum that they had at the back end of last season, which, I think when you're a team trying to get in the top six, that sort of form, particularly in the second half of the campaign, where you just keep grinding out results, putting 3 points on the board, however you manage to do it, is key. And the fact they won't have had that, much like Norwich pre-season, is difficult to gauge. And they've added some pretty clever players, I think, but maybe not been in the building for a massive amount of time. I still think Alex Neil will be trying to gel his squad, where Liam Manning's maybe had a lot of these players in the building for a little bit longer. So we'll see what we get on Saturday. As you kind of said, I think, and Liam Manning maybe said at the press conference today, it's hard to judge, and the proof being the pudding come Saturday.
Yeah, Ewan, clearly it's been all change at Carrow Road. New head coach, 11 new players at time of recording as well. We'll obviously speak a little bit about Josh Sargent later on and the fact that he's still here. How are you feeling about where Norwich are at? Because it feels like it's been a very different strategy, a very different approach to maybe where they were 12 months ago with Ben Napper hiring Johannes Ovtorap.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The signs went quite early after the season finished. It looks as if quite a lot of that money's been invested back into the squad. If you compare the squad at the start of this season compared to last season, you think it's got more strength in depth. It's always hard to gauge a squad because a lot of the players, if I'm totally honest, I don't know too much about. You can look on YouTube, you can go down different avenues to see what they're about, but your eyes don't lie, and I can't wait to see some of the players that have been brought in. Obviously, I've seen quite a lot of Harry Darling in his 2-3 seasons at Swansea. Jeffrey Schlupp, I think he's another really good addition. There is quite an interesting story. I actually knew that he was signing probably a week before it was disclosed, because my son Ben works with his best mate in London. And he told Ben, and he'd sworn me to secrecy, so I couldn't even tell Chris Lakey when I have a coffee with him on a Wednesday. So I knew Jeffrey Schlupp was signing. But there's a lot of optimism around the city. There's a lot of excitement. I can totally understand why. I was at the last game of the season at Carrow Road back in May when Cardiff came to town, or Cardiff came to City. You get the feeling that it's going to be a really completely different starting 11 come Millwall on Saturday. And just looking at Millwall, I remember going back, first game of the 2001-2002 season. We'd had a great pre-season. I think we'd won more games than we'd lost. I don't think we'd lost a game in pre-season. And we were on such a high going into the first game at the New Den against Millwall. Really looking forward to the season. All the hard work had been done. And what happened? We got absolutely slapped 4-0 and brought us right back down to earth. But you look at the form, Norwich have won 8 of their last 9 at home against Millwall. So it's not a bad start, in my opinion.
Just to bounce it back to you, Ewan, because clearly, like when you do the job that we do and fans as well, you do look at pre-season, and I think we all understand you can't read too much into it, but you're just looking for little signs, little trends. I mean, as a player, what is that like? How comparable is pre-season to the actual thing? Because like you say, you can have a great run and win loads of games, and then actually you get punched in the face on the opening day and suddenly everything changes.
Yeah, I remember Nigel Withington's words. It probably was the slap in the face that we needed. Maybe we'd got a little bit too complacent, a little bit too carried away with what we'd shown in pre-season. They are training games, let's be honest. They are there to get your fitness levels to where they need to be for the first game. But as a centre forward, I was in a far better place if I scored a few goals. It didn't matter if I scored at Fakenham or Dereham or this. It didn't matter. As long as I scored quite a few goals going into that first game, mentally I was always in a better place.
And just to double check, there aren't any more signings you've got on up your sleeve, is there? Before,
Not yet. I've got my phone right really close, so if there's breaking news, I will let you know, Connor.
Good man. We'll make a journalist out of you, Ewan. Sam, and I guess to lean on to what Ewan said there about kind of pre-season and that difference, that's the case, isn't it? And you know, you mentioned it earlier. You look at what Liam Manning, or it feels like what Liam Manning has tried to do, and I think we've seen it probably more so in the Dutch games. I thought Saturday they'd probably got that balance a little bit more. This is a different Norwich City team than what people maybe will have left last season having watched, where the focus was on having high amounts of the ball and whatnot. It feels more adaptable, probably a little bit more balanced of a Norwich City team that he's trying to create.
Yeah, I think so. And the important word for me is balance, because as we've discussed a few times, when things don't go particularly well, as obviously they didn't for Norwich last season, you can lurch from one style to another. You can say, okay, Johannes Hoff-Torp was too attacking, and you go all the way to a sort of David Wagner type coach who maybe wants to be more defensive, and you lose that proactivity. I think there's always that temptation, and I can completely understand it. But for Manning, the task is probably to lean slightly more towards the defensive side, as Torp obviously failed to do, but without compromising some of those attacking principles that not only we know Norwich are going to need if they're going to get promoted to the Premier League, but also we know that these fans want to see, particularly at Carrow Road. So I think that's a sort of a really important tightrope for Manning to walk at the moment. And I think what I'd say, based on that Breda game, is that he can do that. I think you look at his time at Bristol City, and he probably can do that as well. So I think it's encouraging in that sense. But yeah, from the sort of swashbuckling, unpredictable, entertaining, probably to a fault era of last season, it will look different to that. I think it will look a little bit more probably nuanced in a way. I think we've seen that with some of the tactics as well, the adaptability of the roles, the complex tasks that some of those players are asked to do. I think there will be a little bit more nuance and a little bit more, as you said, adaptability to what Norwich want to do this coming season. But I found it really interesting in Manning's first pre-match press conference of the season today that he still spoke about wanting most of the tactics to be about his team. We know that he looks at opposition teams. We know they've got, as he labelled it, an army of analysts looking at what other teams are doing. But I found it encouraging that he still spoke about the fact that the most important thing is what Norwich want to do. And hopefully we'll see that at Carrow Road on opening day against a team who definitely will be difficult opposition, as we've outlined. But if you want to get promoted, home games against teams like that, who probably will be in and around the mid-table area, if not a little bit higher than that, those are the sorts of games you probably have to win. So I think those ambitions will lead to high expectations from early on. But based on Manning's previous record and what he's done in pre-season so far, I think, although we don't have any guarantees, of course, I think he is capable at least of doing that this season.
Yeah, and Adam, look, if Norwich are going to progress and achieve what they want to achieve, and obviously just to sort of let people know, 15 minutes in, I'm doing this probably a little bit later than I would do. We are going to come to our predictions later in the show. But if Norwich City want to progress up that championship table, get closer to that top six, a key point is going to be improving that defensive record. You don't need to be UEFA Pro license coaches or like us. I'll exclude Ewan from this, but idiots like us three to really analyse where it went wrong last season. They conceded too many goals, fifth most in the Championship. All three of the relegated sides were beneath them as well. So it's not great numbers, but clearly the goals that they did score. And I think it feels fairly obvious to me with the goalkeeping recruitment, with the central defensive additions that we've already touched upon, coupled with obviously the appointment of Liam Manning. It's clear that is going to be the focus, isn't it? Particularly at the start of this campaign, is to make them a more difficult side to beat.
Absolutely, and that was kind of the recipe, I suppose, that he adopted at Bristol City. They weren't really a free flowing scoring team. They were more of a hard to beat, resolute team that would win games 1-0, 2-1. I think there was some sort of statistic around them and their home form last season that they seemed to win near enough all their wins kind of 1-0, 2-1. And that is kind of the way to do it in the Championship. Any way to get 3 points is the way to gain momentum and push your way up the Championship table. I think they only conceded 20 goals at Ashton Gate last year, where you contrast that to Norwich, who conceded 34. That's another 14 goals, almost double what Bristol City shipped. And even though their goal scoring exploits weren't as sort of high as what Norwich's were, they were just a much more better rounded team. And I think the physicality as well that Norwich have added in terms of those additions you mentioned, in terms of that defensive area, you look at Jakov Medic, the size of him as a player, in a couple that with Harry Darling, who, as Ewan said, played 2 or 3 years now in the Championship, knows what this league's all about. And for me, being one of the most consistent performers in that area as well, you couple that with experienced option they've got in Jack Stacey. You've also got young Callum Fisher, who's still going to hopefully progress and develop even further. Options at left back, I think Mahovo and Krasenia will hopefully both kick on more this season, with the experience of Jeffrey Slupp in there behind them to be a really competitive area. Then even that sort of midfield area just in front of them, I think Topic, you can't again kind of look at him as a figure, and you sort of couple of that as well with Jacob Wright, who I think is only going to get better from having a 6-month stint in the Championship. It just feels like that area, that spine of the team, which is so crucial and so key in the Championship, feels much stronger, and the options are there off the bench to rotate that, or if injuries happen, which inevitably after last season you can't rule out. I think they've got options there that they can bring in and draft in that won't make such a sort of detrimental impact as maybe what they had last season, where they were kind of having to play players out of position, or younger players who were sort of stepping into England for the first time were expected to perform straight away in the kind of likes of Oscar Svartau or Rankwa Forsum, where this year they don't really have that quite so much. So all of that told, mixed in with the technical players that they've got, I think they've got a lot more balanced squad that's ready to attack it, and hopefully maybe ship a little bit less in terms of the back end of the pitch than what they did last year.
You used the word stronger, Adam, just to bounce it back to you, because we both shook the hand of Jakov Medic in the Netherlands. Might be the boldest statement, but I think that might be the strongest handshake I've ever had, which would eclipse probably Jeremy Goss, who is renowned for having a very strong handshake. I mean, it felt like his fingers were about up to my elbow. That's how big his hand was. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Yeah, I think I'm still recovering. My arm's still recovering from that handshake. Yeah, he's certainly a big lad, and even kind of, I think we're both fairly tall, but you sort of stand there and you're sort of looking up to him almost as if he's some sort of school teacher, because he's that big, as a unit, as a defender. So hopefully you can utilise that in the Championship, which is notoriously a very physical league. So he's definitely got all the attributes to hopefully be successful, alongside some good passing capabilities.
Yeah, his muscles have muscles. I think that's how strong he is. I mean, Ewan, to come to you on his defensive partner this season, we assume, which will be Harry Darling, as you say, for the work you do with obviously the Welsh media and covering Swansea. You will have watched a lot of him. You will know a lot more about him than we do, certainly based off pre-season, which, as we've just discussed, isn't always the best indicator. He's been very impressive. He's clearly a Cambridge boy, links to Norwich City. What do you make of Norwich City getting him? Because it seemed like there was a long queue for his signature this summer.
Yeah, I mean, the longer it went on at Swansea, because both Swansea centre-halves were out of contract at the end of last season, both Harry and Ben Cabango. And they had their best season together last season. I think in the first 15 games, Swansea didn't concede more than one goal in a game, and it was down to the way those two played. I think towards the end of the season, when Alan Sheehan took over, he was in charge for 13 games. I think they kept 7 clean sheets in those 13 games. They formed a really, really formidable partnership in that heart of defence. I mean, he was one of Russell Martin's first signings, because Russ had worked with him at MK Dons. The impression that I got from watching him, because obviously Russell wanted his centre half to play a certain way. He wanted them to be comfortable with the ball and try and play out the back. That was Russell's philosophy, and we understood that. But as a former centre forward, having watched him in his first couple of seasons, I thought he'll always give you a chance. As a centre forward, he'll always take a risk. He'll always take a gamble, and he did get caught on quite a few occasions, which led to the opposition scoring. But I get the feeling that maybe Liam Manning won't want his central defenders to be so ball. What's the word I'm looking for? So sort of positive,
playing focused.
Yeah. I think he'll play to their strengths. As I said, he's on the back of, and he picked up a couple of injuries as well. And to be fair, he can nick you a goal. He's got a great strike on him. I remember his first goal for Swansea on his debut at the Rotherham from about 30 yards. I mean, he's absolutely put one in the top corner. He's a threat from set pieces. I think he got 7 championship goals in his time at Swansea. But if he can cut out the risks, cut out the mistakes, as you say, he's a localish boy. I think he's a solid signing, and I think he had the armband on Saturday, didn't he?
Yes, yeah, he did. Yeah. I mean, from because obviously there's been a lot of debate here because of what Liam Manning has done elsewhere and the formations that he's played you, and that will he play a 4, will he play a 3? As you say, you've watched Harry Darling in both systems. Is there one that he seems more comfortable in, or seems to perform better in, or is he quite adaptable to both?
I think he's quite adaptable to both. I think he's played both at Swansea when called upon. I just think put him in a 2 because he knows his responsibility then. Put him in a 3, then I think you can get lost as a centre half. You can sort of pass on responsibility to one of the other 2 if something happens. I think put him in a 4. I think he knows that role better than 3 central defenders.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks for that, Ewan. I mean, Sam, to bounce it to you in terms of recruitment, look, you've got 11 to choose from. Which one are you most excited about seeing of the new crop that are in the building at this moment in time?
I think probably Matthias Kvistgaarden. I think he was the one who, at the time, it felt kind of massive, but because Norwich have done so much business, he's almost been a little bit forgotten about at the moment. Obviously, didn't play in, I think, the first, because was he there for the first set of games in the Netherlands? I think he was for the whole time. So there were 4 games where he could have played and didn't play in any of them, and I think that was probably disappointing for quite a few Norwich fans wanting to get a sight of him. But we saw that for the first time on Saturday. Probably just from looking at him, doesn't fit that same typical physical profile that they've maybe brought in for most of the summer. He's a little bit smaller, but he won a header against one of the centre backs that I thought, probably underlined the fact that he can mix it up a little bit, as I think a lot of the Danish fans were saying at the time as well. So I'm interested to see what he adds. I think he probably comes in a position that's going to be quite important, because as we've spoken about with the defensive reinforcement and how much focus there's been there, probably when you focus more tactical energy on the defensive side of things, as I think Norwich absolutely needed to do after getting that balance wrong last season, you probably need a little bit more individual quality at the other end. So with Ante Sienats likely to improve in what I think is quite a big season for him, Mate Jurasek obviously now sort of fit and available and should play quite a few more games this season. I think they've got a few players to watch out for, but I'd say Kvistgaarden has kind of got lost a little bit in the shuffle of all of these transfers being done, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can produce, because you looked at the level of club that was interested in Kvistgaarden, the amount that they were willing to pay before Norwich found that kind of secret £6.9 million clause to sign him. And I think it suggests that they have a really top level player on their hands. So given the fact we've only seen him for, I think, about 20 minutes on Saturday, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can produce in the Championship once he's up to full speed, and seeing what sort of role he plays as well, because he's played in a couple over his career. I think mainly he's been a proper number 9. So with Josh Sargent still in the building as things stand, I think that's a really interesting one to follow. And ultimately you combine all the fanfare about his arrival and the fact we haven't seen him so much. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how he gets on.
Adam, what about you? Is there one in particular that stands out in your mind that you're excited to see across the course of the Championship campaign?
I think it's probably Papa Amadou Diallo, just kind of a different type of winger than what Norwich maybe have at the moment, more of a sort of direct, pacey type, as opposed to maybe a slightly more physical type. I think he gives them a different option to what they've got completely. The fact that Watford were clearly in the race and wanted his signature, and Norwich have managed to sneak in and get him. It's kind of an intriguing one, I gather, to see how he does and how he adapts. Mets, have sort of previously had a pretty good sort of chain, I suppose, of individuals they've produced that have gone on to do good things in England, particularly as well. So that sort of bodes well. And yeah, I just think, probably sort of a player that maybe will get bums off seats and create opportunities for others, which, is only going to bode well if they can kind of get him in the right spaces. Slightly concerned maybe about his frame, is he going to physically be able to adapt to the league? But the fact we spoke around kind of the type of other individuals they've got and the fact they've got other options, that probably works out better for him than if, maybe they had two or three others like him and maybe, I suppose, given kind of last season and the issues they had, certainly in those sort of areas where maybe Svartau and Forsen were still trying to get, a little bit more physically used to the Championship. I think he's going to have a little bit more time in his hand maybe than what those two did. So all being told, I'm excited to see how he gets on in England.
Yes, and of course a language barrier as well. He speaks Wolof, which isn't even a language that I knew existed. That's usually what we get told we speak on here, a load of Wolof. So hopefully that's a quick adaptation. I've been waiting to get that joke in for a couple of weeks in case you didn't realise. Ewan, Josh Sargent, he's still in the building heading into the start of the Championship campaign. Clearly that could change. There's still just under a month or so of the window to go. Are you surprised given what he's done in the Championship at this stage? And as it stands on Saturday, he'll be playing for Norwich City. Is that a little bit of a surprise given all he's achieved in the last 3 years or so?
I mean, what's he got in his last two Championship seasons? 31 goals in 55 appearances, I think. Yep. Had he been fully fit for the whole of last season, goodness knows what might have happened. Even though we all know why Norwich finished 13th, it wasn't because of the lack of goals. It was the other side of the game. Am I surprised? Yes, I am, to be totally honest. I'm surprised one of the promoted teams to the Premier League haven't come sniffing about, and I've always said I'm a former Norwich player, I'm a former Leicester player. I think Leicester have got a really strong squad. They've lost their talisman in Jamie Vardy. They haven't really got anybody to fill his shoes, in my opinion. And I think, and I don't really want to say it on this podcast, if I was Leicester's head coach or their scouting system, I'd be knocking on the door for Josh Sargent's signature. Yeah, he's had his injury problems, and that's why it's always hard to predict before a season starts, because a club squad can be completely different between when the first game is Saturday or when the window is closed. That's why it's always sort of hard to predict where you think a team will come, who will be the top scorer, who will be the best player. I mean, if he's here come May, I'll be delighted for the football club and the fans. And if he is here from here till May, I'm convinced he'll finish top scorer in the Championship, and he will be the difference maker of whether Norwich finish in the top six or not.
And look, as everyone knows, your career and what you've played internationally as well. How big a factor will the US World Cup be, the home World Cup in 12 months? And you never know what sort of conversations have gone on. Maybe you're better placed to tell us than anyone else. But is it common that an international manager would say to him, "Look, Josh, you've had really, really good years in the Championship. We need to see you at a higher level now"? Or do you think that's less of an issue?
Back in my day, it never happened. It didn't happen. I didn't have Mark Hughes, Bobby Gould, Terry Oreth. The list is endless. Saying, listen, you need to. Even when I was playing in what is League One now for Huddersfield, I never had that conversation. I would not be surprised if it happens in this day and age, because I think the game's changed, and I think international managers are far more involved with their players than what they were back in the day. I think it'd be wrong to try and influence a player like that, because if Josh plays 40 plus games for Norwich City, he gets 20 plus goals. I don't care who you are. he's in that USA squad for that World Cup. There's no doubt about it. So, hopefully, I was pleased that he sort of turned the Wolfsburg opportunity down. He's had a taste of the Bundesliga. We don't know what happened towards the end of those discussions, but I was quite happy for him to turn that. I just hope, there's been rumours of Burnley have been sort of sniffing about. I just hope he gives it another year at Norwich, because I say if he's fit, raring to go, full of confidence, he finishes top scorer in the division for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you're Mauricio Pochettino, as you say, and he's just come off the back of, let's say, a 25-goal championship season, he's in that squad, irrespective of what happens. So that should be the aim. And look, hopefully he heeds your advice, because there's, we're all going to do predictions later. I'm sure probably the predictions with and without Josh Sargent probably look and feel a lot different from a Norwich City perspective. Sam, the one they have lost, and we'll obviously move on to those predictions in just a moment. Borja Sainz is, as things stand, 5:30 on the 6th of August, because things can move quickly. He is the only sort of major outgoing, the only real outgoing at all so far, and clearly there will be some to come. Leah Manning has spoke about that. How big or not a miss do you think he's going to be for Norwich City next season? Clearly a very good start to last season, but the second half of the season wasn't quite as fruitful in terms of goals.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think they'll miss the Borja Sainz that they had in the first half of last season, but they've already missed him for the last 8 months or so. I think as soon as probably that suspension for the incident at Sunderland was kind of the complete killer of his form. But even before then, he had struggled for, I think, a few games while Norwich had lost a bit of form. They didn't have some of their key players. Obviously, Sargent was out injured at the time, and I think Sargent probably took a little bit of the attention away from Sainz to allow him to exploit a little bit more space. So, in a way, I think although it would be great to have somebody like Sainz as he was in the first few months of last season, and probably over the course of the season, they've lost a good few points from the goals that he scored in that time. I think if you're just looking at the team on the last day of the season to the first day of this next season, I don't really feel like they're that much worse off. I think, don't get me wrong, they are a little bit worse off. It's hard to find players that good in the Championship, but I don't think it's the sort of one where, like you said with Sargent, it completely changes predictions and it completely changes any idea of where the team is. I think it's one that probably is a little bit of a blow, but we all said it at the time, really, when the transfer went through. I think Norwich got very good money for a player in the last year of his contract who hadn't really been in form for the last few months and was clearly very open to a move. They managed to get it done very early, as you had mentioned, which I think will have helped the sort of squad building. There wasn't this uncertainty which we're now seeing around Sargent that was kind of, that is now kind of shrouding these preparations for this season. So I think doing that early was important as well. And to be honest, although I think the freshness of a move to Porto, being in a league where maybe some of the teams aren't quite as good as the teams towards the top of the league, could give him a bit of impetus to go and find some really good form over in Portugal. I'm not completely convinced he would have replicated last season this season with Norwich. So I suppose somewhat it is a blow, but I don't think as disastrous as maybe it would seem if you just put the pure facts of his stats last season and the amount that he cost Porto on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see more generally, as we discussed with Chris Gordon, that sort of attacking lineup. And if Sargent goes, that's a hell of a lot of goals they've got to replace as well. Adam, to sort of move on more broadly before we come to our predictions in just a moment, what is your feeling about the way the Championship is shaping up? Because you listen externally, you feel like the general view is that this is going to be a tougher league, not just because of the teams that have come down. And obviously, we'll get Ewan's take on Leicester in a moment, but also obviously two of the teams that have come up in Birmingham and Wrexham, who clearly have some financial muscle power to kind of play with as well. And obviously are very ambitious with American ownership that are intent on getting them to the Premier League. So do you feel it will be a tougher league next season for Norwich City to compete in and ultimately try and get out of as well?
Yeah, I think it probably is. If you kind of take a gauge, I guess, off social media or other various fan podcasts of different clubs, I think a lot of fans and sort of maybe journalists or media types from within certain other football clubs feel that they've got a good opportunity to be in and around the top six this year. You know, Millwall, obviously Norwich play on Saturday. I think if you speak to anyone from their end, they feel they're going to be in the conversation. Swansea seem to be doing a good amount of business. So maybe even those away from kind of those that are expected to be in and amongst that fight. You know, Birmingham coming up, as you mentioned, that are obviously splashing the cash. You know, Kyogo for £10 million. You know, a player that's done it at Celtic at, you know, the top end of Scotland and done it in Europe and various other places. I think they've made some clever signings. You know, Ipswich, we don't want to talk too much about them, but inevitably there is going to be an expectation that they're going to go and have a fairly positive season. The fact they've managed to retain McKenna, yes, they've lost Delap and maybe Hutchinson, still a little bit of expectation that he might depart the football club, but the core of maybe that squad that got them up is still there. They've, you know, lost some of the more experienced ones out of that, but they've still got a pretty good squad on paper. Leicester, there's a little bit more, I guess, uncertainty. You know, the fact they've got a new head coach and some of those individuals that have left. You know, certainly that forward line. You know, as Ewan said, losing Jamie Vardy and maybe not having a direct replacement yet, maybe puts a few question marks on top of all the kind of uncertainty off the pitch as well. Southampton with Will Still, really don't know what to expect from them. You know, still a club that's come down, had a real mentality battering, I guess. You know, having to lose so many games last year. Norwich kind of know that hangover from previous times when they've been relegated. So, yeah, it's a really difficult one to gauge. Sheffield United as well, I guess, missing out on, you know, promotion in the playoff final as well. How will they get on this season? There's so many teams that I think on paper will feel like they've got a good shot. Norwich certainly one of those. I think, you know, I think most of us and most Norwich fans feel they're in a stronger position to go and attack it. So it's kind of now how do they navigate a route, and maybe which of those teams I've just mentioned don't have such strong seasons that Norwich can capitalise on to try and get in the top six.
Yeah, Ewan, look, you're by far in a way the best qualified person to speak about the Championship, given what is it, nearly 350 games in Championship First Division.
15 seasons, Connor. 15 seasons, I think it was at last count.
It's not bad, that is it? It's not bad.
Yeah.
What do you make of the overall strength of the division? Obviously, as you say, you've seen a lot of Leicester. I feel like the view externally is that they're coming down in a little bit of a mess, although, you know, I remember similar things being spoken about Burnley a couple of years ago before Vince and company went in there, and actually it didn't impact them that much at all. Clearly, there's obviously the points deduction thing, which make them into play. And then I don't know if you'll be covering Wrexham next year as well, but obviously, given your Welsh roots, what do you make of their rise? I'm
hoping when they're down at Carrow Road on the 20th of September, I get sent down there and not to Cardiff or not to Swansea.
That'd be a result, wouldn't it?
I think it is a stronger division, and I tell you what, there's a lot of new head coaches in at clubs. If you think Leicester with Cifuentes, who I thought did a really good job at Queen's Park Rangers in the situation that they were in when he took over. There's been a lot of uncertainty at the King Power in the summer. I mean, it took an age for them to make the decision to sack Ruud van Nistelrooy in the end. So he's had less time to prepare his team than many of the others. I mean, Sheffield United have got a new head coach. Watford have got a new head coach. Middlesbrough have got a new head coach. You know, all these teams are up there as favourites to finishing in the top six. Norwich, you know, we've spoken about Liam Manning, a new head coach. The two teams that have come up who are flexing their muscles in Birmingham and Wrexham, I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of them gets into the top six. You know, they've both spent heavily. I think they've both spent wisely in the summer. I don't think they're done there. I look at what Wrexham have done, and they're looking for their fourth promotion back-to-back, which I don't think has ever been done. And they've brought Connor Cody in from Leicester. They've spent £2 million on Kiefer Moore. I'm not too sure about those two signings, I have to be honest. Two players that are probably past their prime in my opinion. I mean, I think it's going to be tougher this season to finish in the top six than it was last season. You look at Saturday's opponents, Millwall. I think they finished eighth, just 2 points outside the playoffs. So they had a really, really good season under Alex Neil. But I mean, there's no reason, with a little bit of luck, keeping everybody healthy, with a squad that they've assembled this summer, There's no reason why Norwich can't be up there battling.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will absolutely be the aim. Let's see how confident you guys are in terms of where they may well finish. Of course, I'll chip in as well. I'm not gonna sit on the fence. So we are going to, over the course, just so I have prepped them beforehand, so hopefully they've had a little bit of a think about it. But we are going to obviously get the predictions on where Norwich City are going to finish, who the player of the season is going to be, who the breakthrough star is, and of course the gents can interpret that however they wish. And we're going to have a rogue Norwich City prediction as well. And again, you can interpret that however you wish. And then, of course, we will do the usual championship top 6 and bottom 3. And of course, when we get to the Norwich City prediction, that should give you some rough idea maybe on where Norwich City will be within that. So let's start with player of the season. Obviously, it was. Let me just double check because it feels like a long time ago. It was Josh Sargent, of course, it was, who won it last year. Kenny McLean the year before that. Ewan's won it a couple of times as well, which is great. So we'll come to him in a moment. But Sam, let's start with you. Who is going to be, come May, stood in the sunshine with the Barry Butler Memorial Trophy at Carrow Road as Norwich City's player of the season for 25-26?
It's a tough one because, as with so many of these predictions, it's kind of, if Josh Sargent stays, it's an entirely different one to everyone else. I think if he does stay and he remains largely fit, to be honest, even if he plays 30 games, I think he'll be Norwich's player of the season. I think, to be honest, that's probably hard to debate, but I'll go with someone else because that is so obvious, and ultimately it probably is slightly early in the window to predict whether he will be a Norwich player after September the 1st. So I'm going to go for Jacob Wright, who I think has been very good in pre-season. Started to show how good he can be last season and got much better basically as the weeks went on. Has been given the armband a couple of times in pre-season, so clearly trusted by Liam Manning. I think he'll be starting on a regular basis, and I think he's basically just a really good player. So I'll go for Jacob Wright, although there is always that Sargent asterisk.
Yes, I was wondering who would maybe take a nibble on the dangling Sargent carrot, and who would be brave enough to do that. Yeah, Jacob Wright, of course, never gives the ball away ever, and that will be statistically proven this season, I'm sure. Adam, let's come to you. Who are you handing the player of the season trophy to?
Yeah, I would apply the same asterisks as Sam in terms of Josh Sargent. But if we're veering away from Josh Sargent and picking somebody else, I'm going to go slightly, I suppose, more left field and go for a Mankell Thorson. I think he's on for a very good season this year, just based off what I've seen in pre-season. I also felt at the latter stages of last season, he was starting to maybe get to grips with English football. You know, you kind of look at his frame and his physicality. He's definitely bulked up a lot more than when he arrived in England. And the fact he's played in, for the top flight of Austria with Salzburg, he's played some Champions League games there. I think he'll probably want to try and push his claims to get back in the Ghana international squad as well. I think there's a player there that, if utilised in the right system, could be exciting, and he's got all the technical skill set to do it. So for me, he's one to watch.
Yes, there is a footballer in there, I think, waiting to emerge. I think they're both good shouts. Ewan, let's come to you. Are you gonna take the Josh Sargent carrot, or are you gonna go elsewhere?
No, I'm going to go elsewhere. I think it'd be wrong because obviously we don't know what lies ahead in the next few weeks. And I'm going to go really left field here, lads. I'm going to go any successful team, and we've spoken about going forward and scoring goals. Any successful team needs a top goalkeeper to keep clean sheets with the help of his defence and the help of the 11, of course. So I'm going to go for Kovacevic. I think if he has a good season, if he keeps clean sheets with the aid of his back four, back five, whatever the head coach wants to go with, I think if he has a good season, I think he's got a great chance of winning the player of the season. Yeah, and if he did do that, it'd be the first goalkeeper since Tim Krul in 2020 as well. So and it's a pretty good list of goalkeepers who have won that trophy. Andy Marshall, of course, Gunny, of course, as well. Rob Green. Rob Green, yes. Yeah. So yeah, there's a good list. Kevin Keelan, absolutely, yeah, guaranteed. Loads of legendary names. So that wouldn't be a bad first season if he was to do that. I'm gonna go again. It's nice that we've all gone different. I think Jacob Wright and Mankell Thorson,
Vladan Kovacevic, all good shouts. I'm going to go for Ante Cianats. I've just got a feeling that if he kicks on in the way maybe he does, and maybe in a post-Sargent world as well, I'm looking to. I've seen it over pre-season. I saw it with Sargent after Pookie left. His shoulders were just a bit broader. There seemed just to be a little bit more confidence in him. Of course, he then went on to have a really good season. I'm kind of seeing similar with Ante Cianats this summer, and I think given a consistent position, and I think that position that we've seen him play in pre-season, just behind the striker, in a 3-4-2-1 or 4-3-3, if you like, I think he could be a real success in that role. And I just got a feeling, injury permitting, that there could be a player in there who is about to really explode in terms of goals, and it would be fantastic for him, I think, particularly in year 2. So there we go. Jacob Wright, Amanko Forson, Vladan Kovacevic, and Ante Cianats. You can, of course, as well, we'd like to hear your predictions, so get them all in down below as we're going along. You can join in as well, and we'll see how close or not we've come May. Hopefully no one that we predict to go down actually ends up going up this year. That would be a marked improvement. Let's go to breakthrough. Breakthrough star then. As I said, you can interpret this however you like. It can be a young player. It can maybe be a signing from last season who hasn't quite kicked on. It could even be a player maybe that you guys feel we haven't seen the best of. So let's start with Adam this time, and we'll work our way around that way. Adam, who's going to be your breakthrough star for 25-26 for Norwich City?
I'm going to go with Oscar Svartau, who I feel and felt certainly last season showed glimpses of what he's all about. I think people maybe forget, when he signed, he was only an 18-year-old kid who had played quite a bit of football over in Denmark, where, you contrast that maybe to what Norwich have in the academy. They've got players in the 21 squad who are 2-3 years older than him. So the fact he's still developing both on and off the pitch, still getting used to life in England, I think in a system and a team that's maybe moulded more, around maybe having number 10s or certainly sort of players that can sort of be a little bit more flexible across the front line. I think he'll get a little bit more opportunities and more joy playing in that system. So for that purpose, I think he'll get more minutes and contribute more in terms of goals and assists.
Good shout. Very talented young man, Oscar Svartau. A lot of minutes as well last season, which you hope will stand him in good stead. A lot of competition in those positions, though. Ewan, let's come to you. Who do you think is going to be the breakthrough star for Norwich City this season?
Well, I was going to go with Jacob Wright, but I think he's broken through already in what he showed in the second half of last season on loan. I'm going to go with a player who I think he cost a lot of money. I think he cost £10 million, who frustrated a lot of us last season. There was a lot of reasons why he wasn't getting any minutes on the pitch. There was a lot of reasons why he was sat in the stand watching performances. But I think this could be a big season for him. And is it Jurasic? Yeah, Matej Jurasic. I'm going to go with him. I think he's got a point to prove. He wasn't wasn't ready for the physical demand of the Championship. I'm hoping he is this season, because I think he's got a big role to play.
Good stuff. That would be fantastic after sort of everything that he's been through in a slow start. Like you say, signed in January. We only saw him for, I think, about 80 odd minutes. So yeah, hopefully he can make an impact. Sam, let's come to you. Breakthrough star for this season.
Yeah, it's tough to come up with something original now because all of the players I was thinking of have slowly been ticked off either in this section or in the player of the season section. I was thinking Ante Cianats, but then I thought, is that a little bit... First of all, is it a little bit obvious? I think everyone thinks he's going to have a breakthrough season. And also, he scored 7 goals and got 4 assists last season. So, he wasn't exactly an obscure player. Then I was thinking Amanko Forson, and Adam went for player of the season, and that would definitely be a breakthrough season. And then I was thinking Jurasic, and Ewan took him. So I'm struggling for an original thought.
You can have the same one. Of course you can.
Okay, no, well, I'll do that then. I'll go with... I think Forson is probably... I think Jurasic will definitely have a better season than last season. I think he'll effectively contribute to Norwich and probably get a few goals and assists. But I think I've seen the same things as Adam this pre-season in terms of his physical profile bulking up a little bit, but also just kind of finding his role. And I think Manning, from everything he said about him in pre-season, referenced him again unprompted in today's press conference. Sounds like he's a big fan. So yeah, I'll go for Amanko Forson.
Yeah, it feels like it might be a clean sweep here, because I was going to go for a man called Forson with this one as well, for pretty much all the same reasons that you guys spoke about. I think he's a really good player, and I think there's something just itching to get out of him, and we saw glimpses of that obviously with the Coventry comeback that he starred in. But I think just little glimpses of his technical quality, the clip ball into the box for Cianats last Saturday, and I definitely feel in a more advanced role where maybe there's less pressure if he loses the ball, because he is kind of risk taking by his nature. The fact he's bulked up, as you guys mentioned, and maybe if he stops leaking away kits, that will help his cause as well. But yeah, I think he could have a really good season, and he seems a really switched on and driven young man. And then hopefully, providing he can stay sort of free of injury, I think you back him to have a much improved Norwich City season. So I think what was that? 3 for Forson, 1 for Matej Jurasek. So that's good going for Forson. Let's go to Rogue Norwich City prediction now. You can have anything you like. For example, I think mine last year was about kind of the commentary around the style of play, which probably proved to be accurate in the end. So that gives you maybe a little bit of an idea. It can be anything you like. It can be about a player, can be about the club, can be about the fan base, anything you like. Sam, let's kick off with you this time, my friend.
I'm going to say that Norwich are going to be really good at set pieces next season, which certainly after last season feels like quite a rogue prediction. But I think you look at the individuals they've got now, Medic, Darling. Darling, obviously, as Ewan referenced, has scored a lot of goals in his career and has that knack for knowing where the net is. I think Manning is quite focused on it as a priority as well. Again, something he referenced in today's press conference. And that just got me thinking a little bit. Some of the factors are sort of going in their favour. I think Nick Stanley took a lot of criticism last season, and probably fairly given that record, but ultimately is somebody who's praised a lot behind the scenes, and everyone you speak to thinks he's really top rate. So maybe with that as a little bit more of a priority, and probably a few more players who are quite good and could go and do that on a more regular basis. I think Norwich might be quite good from set pieces this season, and for me that counts as pretty rogue.
Yeah, I don't remember a Norwich team actually, maybe beyond the one that Ewan was involved with, that got promoted to the Premier League, that had a really strong defensive record. Ewan, let's come to you. What's your kind of out of the box rogue Norwich City prediction for the year ahead?
I'm gonna go. They will be far better on their travels this season than they were last season. Just 4 away wins all season. And it's always been a bit of a hoodoo for the club, because obviously we are out on the limb every other week. You're on a bus on a Friday, or the way they travel these days, probably on a private jet going here, there, and everywhere. But yeah, I'm going to say they're going to show much better form away from home than they did last season, and I think they're going to have to if they're going to finish in the top 6.
I promise I'm not copying here, but that genuinely was the answer that I had written down as well. I think they'll be better on the road this year. As you say, it's been declining year on year since they got relegated from the Premier League. I think because of that adaptability, because of, as Sam says, maybe the strength at set pieces, that ability maybe to pick different options and maybe set up slightly differently, a bit more pragmatic. I think for all of those reasons, just to sort of latch on to Ewan's argument, I think that's probably why I feel similar in terms of what they'll do on the road. Adam, let's come to you. What's your rogue Norwich City prediction for the year ahead?
I'm going to go for Vladan Kovacevic to win the Golden Glove, which is a bit of a bold claim, nice. But that would link in maybe with him being in the frame for Player of the Season, as Ewan pointed out. But I think he's obviously got the celebration as well that he sort of unveiled in his sort of initial signing video, that he sort of holds up the 0 after a game if he keeps a clean sheet, and I think we're going to see plenty of those over the course of the campaign. So that really installs my faith in Norwich's defensive capabilities over the course of the next season.
Well, that's positive in terms of their defensive record, at least in the last couple of seasons, which hasn't been good. The fact that Ewan's talking about a goalkeeper as Player of the Season, and you're mentioning the Golden Glove, we've certainly not been in that realm for a couple of years. So let's hope that all comes to fruition. Right then, this is the big one: Norwich City finish. Let's start with you, Ewan. Where do you see Norwich City? 24 places up for grabs. Obviously, it was 13th last season. Where do you see Norwich City finishing this time around?
I mean, if you look at the start, the first 5 games, Millwall at home, Portsmouth away. Portsmouth had great home form last season. Middlesbrough, one of the teams that are being linked with a top 6 finish, and then two tough away trips to Blackburn and Coventry. I mean, it's not the easiest of starts. I just think at the strength in depth that this squad has got, there's a lot of unknowns, let's be honest. But I think they can finish top six. I'm not going to say they're going to finish sixth, fifth, fourth, or third, but I think they've got as good a chance as any of those other clubs that have sort of been mentioned in finishing in the playoffs. I think they've got as much opportunity as doing that as any of the others do.
That's a good start. Top six from Mr. Iwan Roberts. Adam, let's come to you. Are you of a similar opinion?
I am, yeah. I think they're going to be anywhere between that sort of 7th to 5th bracket. But if I had to be put on the spot, I would tip them to just sneak in, whether that be 5th or 6th. So, I think a top 6 finish could be on the cards.
Goodness me. Oh, goodness. I'm getting quite giddy here. Sam, come on. Join us. Sit top 6.
It is. It looks like we're all feeling similar. I was a little bit on the fence. I definitely think they'll be competing for it. I'm confident on that. And, why not be positive at this stage of the season when everyone's seemingly feeling quite good? Obviously, Ewan and Adam have both gone for top 6 finishes. So, I'll throw my hat in the ring with that as well. And I'll say 6th. What about you, Connor? Surely you're not going to bring misery and doom to the podcast after we've all been so optimistic.
No, I'm not. I'm going to join you boys. Actually, I think Norwich City will get there. I think they've got a better head coach in terms of championship terms. I think they, for the reasons we've said, defensively are going to be stronger. I don't think they're going to score as many goals this season as they did last year. I don't want to say this really with a striker on the podcast, but I actually think if they lose Josh Sargent, it's not about a like-for-like replacement for me. It's about how they share the goals around, and I feel like there'll be a team that share the goals around a little bit better. And actually, you look at the championship last season, I think Joel Perot got 19 goals. So actually, maybe there's a little bit of evidence there. You obviously need someone to do the heavy lifting, but maybe not quite as much as perhaps we all think. So I don't necessarily, I'm not dissuaded from Sargent potentially leaving in that. So yeah, I've got Norwich 5th, which feels very high, but that is kind of where I think I'm at with it. I still think, as Ewan said, a lot has got to go right. A lot of that recruitment they've done, not just this summer, but last summer as well. Those guys have to improve. Obviously, the new recruits have to prove their worth, but I think this is going to be a better, significantly better Norwich City team. So, yeah, I've gone with 5th, which I'm already slightly nervous about heading into the championship season, but I don't think it's too bad. Right, let's get the general kind of top 6, bottom 3 predictions then. Sam, let's start with you. I don't know how you want to do it. If you want to go top 6 and we'll go top 6 all the way around, or if you want to go top 6 and bottom 3 in one hit, I'll leave you to decide how we shape the next bit.
Well, that's exciting. I'll start with my top 6 so I can procrastinate on the bottom 3 and avoid any mishaps as there were last season with Sunderland. I've gone for, in my top 6, Southampton, Ipswich, Sheffield United, Leicester, Norwich, and is that 6? No, that's 5, and Birmingham. Took a little bit of maths there. I'm interested to see whether Ewan has Leicester in there or not, because obviously he knows a lot more about them than me, and from the outside, it's really hard to kind of predict where they're going to be. I think Martí Cifuentes is a really good coach, and obviously the squad isn't too bad. But we spoke about sort of losing Jamie Vardy. It doesn't feel like the mood around them is particularly good. I'm not sure their transfer work has been that great. So I'm interested to see about them. I think there are a couple in there I'm quite confident on. I think Will Steele is a good coach, and Southampton have a decent squad. Unfortunately, I think Ipswich have a very good squad for the league this season, and Kieran McKenna's proven before that he can do it. And then the others, Birmingham, Norwich, Sheffield United, I'm a little bit less certain on, but I think all of them have quite good squads. I'm not 100% on Birmingham really, but I thought there's always a surprise, and why not? Sort of the interesting story of Birmingham, with their new owners and having just come up from League One. So yeah, that's my top 6, and we'll see how badly wrong it is this time next year.
Ewan, I know you're a bit pressed for time, so do feel free if you've got to go after this. So feel free to give us your top 6 and your bottom 3 if that's the case. But how do you see it shaping up championship wise? Have you got Leicester in there?
Very similar to Sam's. My top 2, Ipswich and Leicester. And going back to, that Leicester squad, if you think they've got maybe the best goalkeeper in the league in Mads Hermansen, who's a magnificent goalkeeper. At right back, they've got James Justin or Ricardo Pereira. The centre backs, they've got Wout Faes, Yannick Vestergaard, Okoli, who they signed from. In the midfield, lads, they've got Oliver Skipp, who obviously you know well. They've got Harry Winks, they've got Sumare, they've got Ndidi, they've got Mamadidi, they've got Fatawu, they've got El Kanous, who's an outstanding talent. Jordan Ayew, who get 7 goals last season in the Premier League. They've got good strength in depth. And I know they're going to have the points deduction. We're not too sure how many, but I still think they're capable of finishing in the top 2. My 4 in the playoffs in no particular order: Norwich, Southampton, Birmingham. I was going to go for Wrexham. I think my head was ruling my heart because it's the closest club to my home village in North Wales. But I'm going to go for Sheffield instead.
Lovely, thanks you. And just so we can get you away, because I know you've got other pods and other commitments to do. What's your bottom 3 as well?
Oh, bottom 3, and I hate doing this, and it's no disrespect to any of the 3 clubs that I'm going to mention. I feel so sorry for Sheffield Wednesday fans and their players. They're in absolute turmoil, and they're at Leicester on Sunday. I'm going to the game. It's absolutely scandalous what's happening to that football club, because it's a magnificent football club in Sheffield Wednesday. I love going to Hillsborough, but I just can't see a way out of it for them at the minute. The other 2 is Oxford, who relied heavily on their home form last season to keep them up. I can't see them doing that again this season, even though Gary Rowett did a magnificent job when he went in. And my other one is Nathan Jones's Charlton. I think the world of Nathan. I love his enthusiasm. When he took over at Charlton, I think they were 16th. 2 seasons ago, he got them promoted through the playoffs this season. You've got to pick a third. I hate doing it, but yeah, they're my bottom 3.
Top man, thanks you, and I really appreciate your time over the last hour. Thanks for coming on, and obviously I'm sure we'll catch up plenty of times. And of course, you can read Ewan's column on the PinkUn. So yeah, thank you, and enjoy the rest
boys,
of your
thank you.
Cheers, Ewan. And
Cheers,
we will come to Adam now for your top 6, bottom 3. Let's start with top 6. Adam, where are you at with your top 6?
Unfortunately, the trend of naming a team down the road is going to be in the top 2. Ipswich, I think, are going to be in there. Birmingham, I think, are my other tip for the top 2. And then it's between, in any order, Sheffield United, Southampton, Norwich. And then I'm toying between Leicester or Cov. But I'm kind of depends on the points deduction, I think, and how heavy it is for Leicester. But let's go with Leicester in this instance. But if it's kind of double figures of a points deduction, then I think I'd maybe sway slightly more towards Cov. In terms of the bottom 3, I think, for all the points that Ewan outlined, Sheffield Wednesday, it's really tough to make a case for anything but relegation this season, which is a massive shame for a huge football club. I think Preston, I think they got a little bit lucky last season, to just escape, given that some of the other teams maybe around them, and certainly them, have managed to pick up some points to pull clear. And then it's kind of between Hull and Blackburn for me. I think both of those are in with a shout of relegation. Hull just for the transfer embargo. It maybe depends on who else departs the football club between now and the end of the window. But I think I'll just go for Hull over Blackburn. Just for kind of those reasons.
I'll talk you through my top 6 and bottom 3. I'll go from the bottom and work my way up. So from the bottom 3, I also have Sheffield Wednesday. I think Ewan was absolutely bang on. It's devastating, I think, when something like this happens, particularly with the size of that club. I mean, we've all been to Hillsborough. You see the potential there as well. It feels like a little bit of a tired ground, and that clearly is indicative of underinvestment over the past few years. If you could get that football club going, and hopefully someone does invest and does take that on, what a force that could be if they get it in the right direction. Hopefully they do get resolved. And also, it's not good for the Championship and the league, which is such a competitive, such a close, such a brilliant league, to have a team that is in turmoil in this way, and that looks pretty doomed before they've kicked off for reasons that aren't their own fault. And hopefully Dejan Chansiri does the right thing and sells that football club. So yeah, they're 24th. I've also gone Preston 23. I think they were lucky to stay up last year. Heckingbottom had sort of that bounce, didn't he, initially, and looked like he was going to drive them up. But I think could be more challenging this year. And I'm always wary of those teams that kind of swirl around the plug hole for a little while. It feels inevitable, like a bit like Cardiff, really, that at some point you drop out of it. And then I've gone Oxford in 22nd for similar reasons to you, and really very reliant on their home form. Weren't great on the road. I think it's going to be tough for them this year, although I do really like Gary Rowett, so it wouldn't surprise me if he did keep them up. Top 6, Birmingham, I've gone for 6th. I'm probably not as hot on Birmingham as everyone else. I like their midfield. I think there's doubts about Kyogo and his goal-scoring prowess and whatnot. It's going to be interesting as well. They feel like they're probably going to be the only team that are going to be uber possession-heavy in a league that feels like it's going to be very high press, high energy, quite well structured, adaptable coaches. So it's going to be interesting to see how Chris Davies does there. Norwich in 5th, as I said. Coventry in 4th. I like their squad. If they can keep hold of Jack Rodoni, I know there's been some links away. I think they could have a really good year, although still think there's big question marks about Frank Lampard. 3rd, I've gone for Leicester. I think some of the quality in their squad will still stand them in pretty good stead. Even with a points deduction, I think even if it was 9 points, you look at maybe where those promoted teams have been in recent years, that probably realistically is the difference between automatic promotion and the playoffs, rather than maybe the playoffs and mid-table. But yeah, again, you never quite know what condition they're going to come down. Southampton, I've gone for 2nd. I think they've got a really, really talented squad, probably in terms of individual talent, maybe the strongest in the division. But like Sam said, I don't think any of us can say with any real conviction or confidence quite how good Will still is or isn't going to be. So that feels contingent on him being quite good. And then top, unfortunately, I think it's going to be Ipswich Town with the squad that they've got. Kieran McKenna. And I'll say this quietly, and maybe this should have been my road prediction. I actually think they're going to win at least one East Anglian derby this year as well. So I'm sorry to say it. Hopefully I'm wrong and that record continues. So yeah, that's my bottom 3, top 6. Sam, I don't think we got your bottom 3, and obviously not to tire the joke, but this is great news for the clubs that are in it, because it means one of them is bound for the Premier League.
I was going to say all the fans of the other clubs in the Championship have been desperate to find out who's in my bottom 3. But yeah, I've gone with, I think, probably some more reliable options this year than I did last year. I've gone for Sheffield Wednesday bottom, again, same reasons. And I'd echo that it's quite a huge shame. But when they still had Danny Rowe, somehow I thought maybe there was a tiny little chance. But as soon as he's gone, I don't see how they could possibly do it, to be honest. Then Charlton, I think they've just got quite a huge gap to bridge from League One and winning the playoffs to the Championship. I think as much as the Premier League to the Championship is becoming a bigger gap, I think that's also true of Championship to League One. And when you consider that probably 2 of their rivals that they'd hope to drag in Birmingham and Wrexham have all that money to spend, I think they're gonna struggle. And then the other one I've gone for is Blackburn, because I think they were just they really plummeted last season. Obviously they were competing for the playoffs. They were right in that mix. Right up until really John Eustace left, and then as soon as he did, they plummeted really. And I don't think they've got the sort of finances or resources to really replenish that squad. They've obviously lost Tyrese Dolan as well, who was maybe their best player last season. I think they might struggle, but I'd probably throw Preston in there as well. I think they'll be in and around it. But yeah, I would just about go for Blackburn in 22nd.
Yeah, I think Blackburn are a good shout, actually. And I'm still a bit confused as to what Valérien Ismaël is. I've seen him at, 3 different Championship clubs now? Barnsley, West Brom, Blackburn. I don't think I've missed anyone in there, have I? But yeah, it feels like I've seen kind of 3 different styles of play and a different coach at every single club he's managed. And I'm still none the wiser if he's actually very good or not very good. Or sorry, go on, Adam, if I missed one.
I think you're forgetting Watford.
I am forgetting Watford, of course I am. He's been on that merry-go-round. So yeah, I'm still not sure. I knew there was another one. I'm still not sure if he is any good or not, really. So that's going to be interesting to find out. So there we go. That is how we see not just Norwich City's season shaping up, but also the wider Championship campaign as well. Give us your predictions. Tell us how much of idiots we are for the predictions that we've made. Have we gone too giddy? Have we been a little bit too calculated on where Norwich City are going to finish? Thank you, of course, as well to the legend that is Iwan Roberts for taking an hour of his time out to speak to us. Absolute legend, nicest bloke that I've encountered who's played professional football. No offense to any of the other guys, it's just Iwan is brilliant. And of course, you can read his columns throughout the season in the PinkUn. Sam, thank you. Adam, thank you. We will be at Carrow Road on Saturday for the start of that championship season against Millwall. Here we go again, folks. Strap in.